Welcome to the Bettendorf Public Library's Take Home Workshop. This month we're making bookmarks. We're making button and ribbon bookmarks. I really like this bookmark because it is very snug. It stays in place well. If you have a tendency to throw your book into a book bag and find that traditional bookmarks slide right out, this is the bookmark for you. In our kit, you're going to find a length of ribbon. This is 18 inches. So 18 inches is about twice the height of a fairly standard hardback book. If you are a paperback reader and you want to make your bookmark a good size for paperbacks, you'll need to cut this down a little bit to about twice the size of the height of a paperback book. So you'll have different bookmarks for different books, but that'll ensure a nice snug fit. So we have this ribbon that I've already cut to 18 inches, and I used a pinking shear to mitigate fraying, but that's not necessary, and these ends are both going to be folded under anyway. So you have your ribbon, you have a button, you have a hair tie, and this is just a coated elastic hair tie, nothing special about that. Then you have about a yard of white thread. Now, ordinarily, if I was doing something on something like this, I would probably use a navy blue thread, but for demonstration purposes and based on the assumption that some of you will be beginning sewers, I'm using a white thread because that contrast does make it easier to see the stitches and easier to see what you're doing. If you are a more experienced sewer and have navy blue thread, you go right ahead. If you don't want to sew it at all and you want to use glue, you could use hot glue or fabric glue. You could do it that way as well, but I'm going to show you a simple hand-stitched way to do it. That thread was wrapped around this little plastic tube that has you can't really see it, but there's a needle in there. So that's how we make sure that our needles get transported safely. Now these are sewing needles, which means that they are a small eye and they are sharp. So I do ask that you be careful not to stab yourself. That's what's in our kit. The only thing that we're asking you to supply is a pair of scissors to get your needle out of the case and to snip the ends of your thread when you're done with them. Okay, so I've threaded my needle, and then at the other end I've put a good size knot, and that knot is going to be hidden, so it's okay if it's kind of big or unattractive. It does not matter in the least. Get this out of the way. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one end and I'm going to fold it to the back of the ribbon, to the undotted side, about 1/4 inch. And if you have an iron, you can iron that down, might make it a little easier, but if not, that's okay, because then I'm just going to fold it again. So one fold and then another, so you have like a little tube at the end, and then we're just going to sew this down, and we're going to sew it along this folded edge here, because that's going to make sure that we catch this middle layer, because we're going to fold it all the way through. And we're just going to do a simple back stitch. So I'm going to start inside the fold, come up, and I'm going to be working right to left. If you're left-handed or something else works better for you, go ahead. So I'm starting just a little bit from the right-hand edge. I'm going to come up, and then I'm going to go back down to the right of that stitch. And that's why they call it a back stitch. You're going to come up a little bit to the left, and then go back down behind where you came up, from where you're coming back to the right. As much as possible, you want to keep the length of these stitches even, just because obviously they are visible and it's just going to look a little bit nicer. And again, this is where using like a navy blue thread would work really well for the aesthetics of this in some ways, because you won't be able to see uneven stitches. I also find that if I do it like this, where I'm going down and up in the same motion, I can get more even stitches that way. I just position my thumbnail about where I want it to come up. You want to take it nice and slow. You don't want to rush hand sewing because that's how you get stabbed. You also want to make sure that you're catching all 3 layers. So you've got the front, the back, and then that little tail that we folded inside of there. Make sure that you catch all 3 layers on every single stitch. Okay, once I get down to the end here, I want to make sure that I'm coming up as close to the edge as possible. I want to just make sure that those edges are secured. There we go. Back down again. And then I'm going to knot it on the back, and I just bring my thread around, bring the needle up through the thread, so it's just making a big loop. And then I push down on the fabric and I pull that thread, and it makes a nice knot right tight up against the fabric. And I do that twice, and then I'm going to snip it right as close to the knot as I can get it without cutting the knot. Now this is what's going to go on the inside of your bookmark, so if there's a little bit of tail there or something, it's okay if that side is not as pretty. But there's your first side. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this side with the addition of our hair tie. So I'm going to fold it over about 1/4 inch, fold it again, but before I fold it again, I'm going to put the hair tie there, and then I fold it over the hair tie. So it's just like that. So one fold, and then the second fold will go over the hair tie. So there's a little loop in your ribbon, and the hair tie is in it. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing where we're going to, right on the edge of that fold, we're going to run a stitch all the way across there again. So once I've sewed that seam and I have my my hair tie in there nice and firmly, then I'm going to go ahead and knot off on the back again, just like I did before. And give it a trim. Okay, so you have a very nice secure loop at one end, elastic loop, and you have a reinforced edge at the other end, and this is where our button is going to go. So again, using that same thread, I'm going to knot the end. And that's the way my mom taught me to knot when I was a kid. So you just take your thread and you put it on your finger and you put an X, and then you twist it off and pull it tight. And there you have your knot. Now I put 2 of them in there, so I'm going to trim one of them off, but that's how I learned how to knot the end of your thread. Thanks, Mom. Now we're going to take our button and we're going to sew it on in this end. And as much as possible, I'm going to keep the stitches on this area, on this folded area, because I'm going through 3 layers. It's just going to give it a little bit more bulk, a little bit more strength. So I'm just centering up. The ribbon is the same width as our button. And I'm going to come up to go down in the hole across from the button. Come up from the bottom. And this first stitch is always the trickiest one to find your spot. Come up from the bottom, go down in the top. And then you see where your stitches go, so it's easier to see where you need to come up and go down. And I'm just going to keep doing that until I feel the button is secure. If you want to do it until your thread is all used up, you can. That's honestly probably a bit of overkill, but you can if you want. So my button is on there, it's nice and strong. So I'm going to do the same thing where on the back I'm going to do my knots exactly the same way as I did them before, where I'm just going to loop the needle through the thread, pull it tight, put my finger down and press and pull. And that makes sure you get a nice knot. We're going to do 3 this time. Right tight up against your thread, against your ribbon, and we're going to snip that as close to the knot as we possibly can. And there you have your button on there. And there is your bookmark. I'll show you again this time on the back of the book because I can't take the other one off, I'll lose my place. Just slide it in there and loop that around. So you've got a fair amount of play there, so for different size or different thicknesses of books, but it's not going anywhere, it's staying nice and snug. You can do it with any kind of ribbon. The grosgrain I think is really nice, but any kind of ribbon, fancy buttons, whatever you like. We want to see pictures of your bookmarks. We want to see them in your books. That's even better. So please share with us on social media, and we'd like to thank the Bettendorf Public Library Foundation for sponsoring this take-home workshop.